Welcome to the Billable Mom Podcast, led by attorney Cari Rincker, where we discuss working motherhood, but especially geared to professional mothers who are trying to juggle their time. Our time is precious, both at work and at home. We talk time management and productivity hacks, the struggles of being a working parent, and provide a community where other billable moms are also trying to calm the chaos 6 minutes at a time. Listen to stories of other working moms, but especially lawyer moms, navigate the waters balancing career and the ever-present demands of motherhood.
Hi, I'm Cari Rincker, and I am the Billable Mom. I'm really excited for today's conversation with Kaylee Boehm, and I think we're both sitting in the same town right now in Shelbyville, Illinois, where Kaylee has her own law practice of Boehm and Probst. Kaylee, welcome to the podcast, and why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do and your path to becoming a Billable Mom.
Thank you first, Cari. Thank you for having me. It is exciting for us to do this podcast together because we're both, as you say, billable working moms here, both of us in Shelbyville, Illinois, which we're excited to have the support of one another and to put this forward for other people. I work at Boehm and Probst Law Office. It was a new law firm formed earlier this year in 2024 with my partner, Dustin Probst. We're a general practice firm. My practice mostly revolves around family work, a lot of adoptions, a lot of divorce, a lot of just family cases. And then Dustin does a lot of probate work, general civil litigation with some dabbling in estate planning. And we both do real estate work and things like that. So that's our law firm. And again, we're located right here in Shelbyville with you.
So Kaylee, I've spent many years admiring you as an attorney. This is pre-kids. And then that I am also a mother. I look at you and admire you so much, just as a fellow working lawyer with two children. So I'd really love to talk about sort of your path there. Can you tell us where you were in your career when you had your first child?
Yes, I will. So I got married and started my marriage right between undergraduate degree and law school. And then I went to law school. And then actually, when I took the bar, I didn't know, but I was pregnant. I found out a few days later after taking the bar. That pregnancy ended obviously not in a child. It just didn't work out. But then I was pregnant shortly thereafter. And then, so I technically graduated law school in December of 2012, took the bar in February of 2013, and then had my son in January of 14. So I was not even a year into actually being a licensed attorney when I had my son. And then my daughter was born 2.5 years later in 2016.
So you are fresh out of law school, just took bar, and you have to wait, for your results for several months. You're ongoing a pregnancy. What was your thought process there about your career at that point in time?
Been married for several years. My husband's a couple years older than me, so he was eager to start that path, but he had been patient with me as I finished law school. And so when when my son was born, of course, we were both overjoyed. And I spent a lot of time home with him, just a couple of weeks. And then I worked from home transitioning back and then went back to work full time when he was 6 weeks.
So I don't know about you, but I feel like after I had my first child, I did not know what to expect. Okay. And then I transitioned to work and I just felt very off balance. So talk to me about your experience. Like, how did your maternity leave go and how was that transition back to the workplace afterwards?
So my pregnancy with my son in 2013, that I had him at the very beginning of 2014, was actually a pretty easy pregnancy. I still went to court up until the time that I pretty much had him. And I only remember one time I went to court and I couldn't button my suit jacket because I was so pregnant. And there was a very older judge in a very rural county that asked me if I could button my jacket to appear. And I respectfully said, "Sir, at this time I can't." But that was really something that sticks out for me during my pregnancy with my son. His name is Waylon, and he's now 10. And then my pregnancy with my daughter a couple of years later was actually much different. In her pregnancy, I was high risk with her. I was diabetic, swollen from the day that I found out I was pregnant. I just didn't, and my body didn't handle the pregnancy the same. So that one was different. That one was more challenging. I had to really adjust my calendar there towards the end and have more in office time, where it wasn't so hard on my body. But both pregnancies overall were pretty easy.
It's so funny. You're reminding me during my pregnancy with my daughter, which is actually, again, also worse as well. There's an old wives' tale that, that boys make the mother more beautiful, right? And then
Heard that, yes.
steal the beauty from the mother. So
Yes.
I felt that way, at least with
I felt that. Yes, yes. It was difficult when I was pregnant with her just because I was, again, diabetic, high risk. I had to go to the doctor more. So I was always trying to put the doctor's appointments either at the very beginning of the day or at the very end of the day so they could miss less work, or I would go to court and then on my way back, hit the doctor's office and then back to the office. It didn't always work out that way, but I would say that's how I kind of juggled the extra appointments and necessities of my pregnancy. My first pregnancy didn't require that. So I kind of had a good transition. I'm glad my first one was my easy one because I really had my feet on the ground better by the time my daughter was born.
And you were in Shelbyville at this point in time, is that right?
Correct. Yes.
So you and I both know there's not a lot of daycare providers around here. I mean, childcare, I think, is a real problem in rural communities. So how did you navigate that?
It's funny you actually mentioned that because when my husband and I wanted to from Shelbyville, we actually moved here so I could pursue my legal career here after an opportunity opened itself. And so as soon as I found out I was pregnant with my child, my son, that's what anyone that I spoke to, they said in Shelbyville, you have to find daycare. And I thought, I'm not even telling people I'm pregnant yet. And I'm calling daycares to make sure I can find someone. And so I ended up getting a couple of names from the local elementary school of just who are the daycare providers. Again, because not being from a small town, it's difficult to get those leads and have any idea of who's an appropriate daycare provider, especially with the hours I was going to need. Ended up finding a local woman. And the reason I said at the top that this is funny is because last night was Halloween, of course, and we were trick-or-treating and we stopped by the old daycare provider. We take my kids there every year to trick or treat, and they haven't gone there for years, but she's still a very a special part of just their childhood and their memories. So it's just ironic we're talking about it since I saw her last night. But so my son started going there. And then when my daughter was born, she went there as well. But it was difficult. That there is a large need. I wouldn't say just in Shelbyville. I wouldn't say it's unique just to our area, but just I think rural in general, there's a real need for daycare.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to any listener right now who might be pregnant and they're in a more rural community and they're thinking to themselves, what am I going to do?
One thing I ended up using actually as my kids were older, just because it came more prevalent and I just heard better reviews about it, was I used care.com several times. And interviewed people at my actual law office, interviewed them there to see if they would be a good fit for our family. And I found actually 2 care providers that I now use in the summer months, because my kids are older, don't go to daycare, but that I use in the summer months. And I found, utilize it that way. If I was younger, again, and starting this over with babies, I probably would have entertained that option as well if I wasn't able to find someone, if I could use someone in home. Otherwise, again, reach out to your schools, reach out to your community and just kind of get some reputable names. Start early. Don't wait until you're on maternity leave looking for a daycare provider.
Yeah. So Kaylee, you and I both know that family law is kind of a litigation practice. I mean, you're in court, you're doing trials, all the things. And something that I just really have struggled with is time management, and I know that I've spoken about this, on this podcast before, but, I was a little traumatized with my firstborn because I had a 5-month-old baby at home. And then I had a 6-day custody trial. And, the trial is one thing, but the prep is another, right? There's a lot of prep that goes into that. And so you talk to me about like how you are navigating your time management skills with work and home.
Okay, so for time management, I would think, immediately comes to mind is that in law school, I wish they taught this. I really wish this was a topic because I feel like they teach you certain things and then you're just kind of shoved out into whatever area of law you decide to pursue after receiving your law degree. And there's just no preparatory how important time management is. I am not one of those people that likes to work super late in the evenings because I'm a mom. So, by 5 o'clock, I really like to be home with my kids. That doesn't always happen. That doesn't always happen. There are outliers, as you said, trial preparation can, interfere, or if I need to take off to take my kids to appointments or activities, then I may have to make up time in evenings or weekends. But I try to it to be my set schedule to just work like 7:45 to about 4:30, 5 at the latest. With that comes a great deal of I have to forecast where my time is going to go and what's most important. And I think you and I had recently had a side conversation where you're kind of allocating almost every day of your month, so that you know what you're to be working on. And I just make sure that when again, today's November 1st, so it's a great time for us to be having this conversation. But I take a look at my calendar as a whole, as a month. And then a few days leading up to trial or the week before, making sure I have prep work. And then I'll open up my calendar and say, this is times that I can meet with clients in person. And these are the times that I have allotted to meet with new clients. So that is my suggestion. Okay, that's my approach. But that's how I've been approaching it, especially in 2024 after starting my own firm. And it's been a great adjustment, and it's allowed it for me to fit things in and to make sure I'm not any type of scrambling at the last moment happens. Of course, I can't always predict every emergency or situation, but that is how I handle it.
I love that, thinking about things a month at a time. I do have an executive assistant. I think we had talked about this in the past, and she sort of gives me a week at a glance, right? So I'm able to look at things sort of a week at a time. But we're just now starting to think about, okay, let's do a month at a time. Let's do like quarters. Like what are the big events that are happening? I think it's so hard when you get in the weeds of like your day to have like any forethought, right? And you have to have a forethought as an attorney, or you become reactive instead of proactive about how you spend your time.
I couldn't have said it better. I always tell my clients that we have to stay proactive. If we become reactive, I'm not doing you very many favors. It doesn't happen all the time, but I'd rather be on the offense. I mean, every case has offense and defense. Sometimes it kind of depends on the position of the client. But I also then on Fridays, like again today, good time for us to be chatting. I try to have at least 4 hours of in-office work on Fridays. So if I need to do something in the morning or in the afternoon, then I need 4 hours just to be here, so I can meet with my staff. I can make sure my files are allocated, and then I boil it down to just the following week. So we start off, at a month at a time, make sure everything is accounted for, and then we go on Fridays and look at the next week so that everything is accounted for.
Awesome. Hey, Kaylee, let's take a quick break. Let's hear from our sponsor. And when we return, I want to talk a little bit about the transition with your second child. And then we'll go from there. Does that sound good?
Great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bottorff, SVP of Growth at Lawmatics. Here's everything you need to know about Lawmatics. Ready? We are the #1 CRM for law firms of all sizes. We help you win more business, speed up intake, and boost efficiency. We integrate smoothly with your favorite practice management tools like Clio, Smokeball, and Practice Panther. And get this, 95% of Lawmatics users see an increase in revenue, while 91% see an increase in efficiency. Check out Lawmatics at lawmatics.com and mention the Billable Mom during your demo to get 10% off your subscription. That's LAWMATICS.com.
So, Kaylee, I know that you're not just a mom of one, but you have multiple children. So tell us about that transition for you about that point in your career.
So my daughter, she's currently 8. Her name is Reagan. Again, after coming off a difficult pregnancy, we go back and giggle at the videos or the pictures of my big swollen feet. I mean, I had all the symptoms when I was pregnant with her, which she was a summer baby though too. So I think just having an August child kind of just contributed to that. But nevertheless, she's now 8. She's in the 3rd grade. But when she was born, my son was just shy of 2.5. So they're a little over 2 years apart. I remember my second, maternity leave was different, just because I did have my son, and I felt the same mom guilt. I'm sure that it's been echoed for your past interviewees that I didn't want to necessarily send him to daycare because I was home during the day, but I also wanted to give her my undivided attention. So it was a strong struggle for me how to go from just him to being this, the center of our household to now, giving both of them my time and attention. But I kept him home some days, and some days he was in a preschool program. So I felt that kind of, he needed to go for that socialization and education. But then when I went back to work after she was born, I took her to daycare at 6 weeks as well. I went back to work full time. I struggled more, I think, with going back with both of them in daycare, just because I was I think a little bit more overwhelmed having two kids. But it was nice they were in the same daycare, so I could take them up in the morning, and then I would pick them up in the evening, and my husband would help with that, that transportation as needed as well. So I did work a little bit more on the weekends, I think, when she was a baby, because I knew that from my son how fast it goes. Babies don't keep, as they say, is truly been echoing as I watch them now grow up at 10 and 8. So I did work a little bit more on Saturday mornings, or we just have kind of more, I would say, more relaxed weekends when they were little. So I could do things on the weekends as I needed to, because I wanted to make sure I was there present in the morning and on the evenings.
So I like that you brought up the weekends, because
Yes.
I am guilty as charged. I am still work on the weekends. Sometimes, usually, I am working on the weekends, and I do not want to. I want to be with my children. And so I guess, how have you sort of navigated that and having those containers for work time and family time?
So when they were younger, their nap times were when I would work. On a Saturday and Sunday, they would sleep for 2.5 hours, like, little kids do. So that's when I would work. But I then kind of, I would say, transitioned out of nap time. I don't have that block of time anymore. So now I'll either, do it in the mornings, when everyone's either, they've gotten to the sleep in stage as they've gotten older. So they sleep in a little bit. So I'll use my quiet time. I don't ever schedule things on the weekends, like consultations or client appointments, unless it's absolutely necessary. And again, I try to, but like we talked about at the beginning of the month, I make sure all of my personal and family requirements are allocated on my calendar before I say I'm available on this Saturday or that, or, this for this appointment or that. So I try to limit it. And then if I do work on the weekends, I make sure that it's something that I can easily transition at home. One thing with my firm is that I can do the same thing really at home as I can do from my office, which is a great adjustment, and allows me that flexibility to at least get through all of my emails every day. As I think we've talked about before, that can really just get out of control quickly. So even if I'm on vacation or if I'm at home, then I go through my emails every single day and make sure everything is flagged that needs a follow-up or marked completed as if it's completed. So it's not mandatory hours on the weekends. It's kind of unavoidable from time to time, especially if there's a big trial Monday morning. But I try not to get too overwhelmed or put on too much on my plate on the weekends.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I also really admire the fact that you don't really work at nights. That's something that I have had a difficulty with. Like when I put my kids to sleep, I am dead. Like I am just so exhausted from the day. And so it's difficult for me to understand. I feel like there's a lot of female attorneys that then turn around and then work a couple hours after that. And so, I guess everybody's clocks are a little bit different, but it's nice to hear that you sort of also have that same sort of boundary in place. So, I mean, what if you could go back in time and to do your maternity leaves different, would you change anything?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say two things. One is I am not a late, I'm a night owl. I'm not a night owl. I am a much early riser. I usually wake between 4 and 5. I use that quiet time too instead of weekend time. I don't get up that early on the weekends, but on a work day, I typically do. And so again, that's kind of my quiet time. And if I can't get it done, then I never bring home something. I say never lightly. On maternity leave, I would actually do things differently. And in preparation of this conversation with you today, I went back and I thought a lot about my maternity leave. I would say that I just wouldn't have worked. I started working from home when my daughter was about 3 weeks. My prior firm would bring me some work and I would do things, and I just wouldn't have done that. It just goes by so quick. And I also wouldn't have went back to work at 6 weeks. That was the requirement of my old firm, but I would have requested or demanded a little bit longer. I don't think I was ready to come back full time. I don't think a baby is ready to leave their mom at 6 weeks, full time either. So I would have just taken it a little bit slower. I also, a friend of mine is also a younger female attorney that I've been kind of in communication with. I advised her that maybe 6 weeks before she's expected to deliver, to just kind of stop putting stuff on your calendar. I worked right up until I had both of them, and that was a little bit stressful at the end, because you can't predict the exact day they're going to be born in most circumstances. And I remember just feeling a little bit of stress and pressure, especially as I thought my daughter was going to come relatively early. What am I going to do about these hearings, or what am I going to do about these appointments? So I would just start lightening up their calendar, 6 weeks in advance.
Yeah, that's so smart, because I'm pretty sure I was at a four-way settlement conference 2 days prior to I was scheduled to be induced with my daughter, and it's just not a good way to like go into, that transition in your life, and so I love that kind of like slow down approach. I think that's
Yeah,
really
I wish someone would have given me that advice. Yeah. Because again, I think we're all dedicated to our job, and I want to do just as good job as a mom as I am as a lawyer, as I am as a wife. And so I felt like, I should have, I owed that to my clients, obviously they could see that I was going to have a baby at any time, but I have taken my calendar a little bit lighter to make sure my office work was more in a setup for me to be gone for a few weeks.
Yeah. And I also, by the way, wish I would have not worked during maternity leave and taken more time away. And I remember distinctly with my daughter, I actually felt pretty baby trapped at home with her after I was a newborn. I am holding the baby all day. And it actually inspired me to have this podcast because I was running my entire life in law firm from my phone with my one hand and holding my baby with my second hand, and I was so anxious to get back to work, and I would do anything to go back now and just hold my baby all day, and that time comes and goes so quickly. So
Yes. And again, when we, the daycare provider that I just let her know last night how much she was really a part of our family during that time. I mean, she saw my kids sometimes more than I did. And I hate that, but that was just, part of being a working mom. And so someone once told me that it's just as important to show your kids that you're a good mom as you are, you can be successful, you can do these great big things and be both. And I agree with that. I just told my daycare provider last night how much she was important to me during those years, because I sent her a 6-week-old baby as I went back full time. So
absolutely. So we're going to take another quick break here from our sponsor. And when we return, Kaylee, I would love to know if you have any home organization tips. This episode of the Billable Mom Podcast is brought to you by Rincker Law PLLC, focusing in food, farm, and family. When I'm not a mother juggling 2 littles, I'm the principal attorney of Rincker Law, where we believe that strong communities have both strong families and a food, fiber, and agriculture system. At Rincker Law, not only do we do family and matrimonial law, but we also work with entrepreneurs and agriculture producers on business, estate, and succession planning. We are a client-focused, results-driven law practice. At Rincker Law, we also support other billable moms, not only here in the workplace at Rincker Law, but also with clients, helping them live their dreams both in business and at home. For more information, visit us at www.rinkerlaw.com. Cari Rincker, Rincker Law, Food, Farm, and Family. So, Kaylee, I know you are very organized when it comes to the practice. I'd love to know if you have any tips and tricks for your home life.
Well, at this moment, I guess it's easier. It's gotten a little bit easier because my kids can now do a couple things. They can unload the dishwasher, they can go outside and play with friends and not need immediate supervision because they're 8 and 10. So that has helped this transition. I keep saying as they get older, this is my favorite stage and this is my favorite stage, but they are really just at great ages right now. They still really need me, but they're also still a little bit independent. So that's helped kind of transition me into, I would say, that new stage of motherhood. Which is great. And so you'll get there when your kids get older. You're going to remember that I said it's easier when you can kind of delegate, go get your shoes on or get your clothes out for school. And so I'm not as organized as home as I am at my firm because I just feel like the two are a little bit different. But I do try to get my kids to do things at night to prepare for the next day and teach them that that's just as important. Kind of preparation is half the battle most of the time. And so we try to do things the night before to make sure the mornings are seamless. We also, do kind of seriously monthly calendaring, just like I talked about at the firm. We make sure all the sports and all the appointments and everything is scheduled, and so that everyone is aware of where that is. And I keep it posted at home, and we keep that electronically, so my husband can access it on his phone. It's on my phone. It's up at the house. There should be no questions where everyone needs to be. And so that's how we kind of run the house now. It wasn't always that way. I would say when they were smaller, there was just, I would just try to make sure the laundry was done to get me day to day. So it wasn't as organized, but.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I feel like I have like an early court appearance that I am, my son has, Spider-Man pajamas on half of it, jeans on the other. I can't get him to brush his teeth. So, yeah, I think I love the idea about thinking about the morning, the night before, and maybe even picking out clothes and forecasting.
When I was doing their clothes, and I would, have kind of hanging bins in their closet, and I would just do 5 days at a time. I would just do that on Sundays when I did all the laundry, and I would have every morning. So as they got a little older, I could say, okay, go pick out the third bin. This is Wednesday.
Right.
Put your clothes on. If they were babies, and if my husband was in charge that morning, he wouldn't have any question about where everything was. They just, dress the kids and, get out the door. So I've laxed on that a little bit just as they've gotten older, and they kind of have their own opinions, but I just make sure it's done the night before. Make sure we're looking at the lunch calendar the night before, and it's been themes this week at school, so it's been an extra element every morning. What's the theme? Are we doing the theme? Are we not? So I do just try to spend. They're in bed at 8:30, and so from 7:45 to 8:15, it is just to make sure that everything is prepared as much as we can be for the next day. So it doesn't always go that way because sports definitely interfere, and sometimes we're, last night we were trick or treating, so that didn't happen. But that's just generally how I try to approach it.
Yeah, I love that. I feel, and my kids are young, but I'm already with Jace thinking about it's brown day or it's orange day or is it bad hair day or I don't know. So there's a lot to manage there with all.
There is, yes, but it's all fun, and again, I think as they get older, they can take on a little bit more. And I think as parents and as working parents, it's important for us to teach our kids, this is how we approach a day and be prepared. What just kind of make sure we're not just, again, as you said, not being reactive, not waking up at 7 and being late somewhere, not realizing there's a theme, but being proactive to say, what do we need to have prepared for the next day? So it's definitely not perfect, but I try to instill that in my kids and show them.
Love that. So Kaylee, I'm curious, are there any products, books, software programs, or other hacks that you would recommend to our listeners?
Just recently in the last, I would say 60 days or so, last 3 months, it was actually a gift from my husband. So maybe it was a cue that I needed some help at home, but we just got a skylight calendar. Have you seen those?
I have. I was wondering if what you used.
Yes. So now we just implemented that at the beginning of this school year. And I had just been doing it other ways, more of like a whiteboard type calendar, but it wasn't always, someone would have to tell me when it was, and I'd have to put it on. And then as you're somewhere, you couldn't do it from your phone. So now with the elements of technology, trying to embrace as much of those as I can, that's really been helpful. I had seen ads about it for a long time, and my husband got it as a gift. And then now he can upload things. Again, the kids can just turn it on, and they all have their own colors. I can add things from my phone, delete things from my phone. So it's really helped with just calendaring and scheduling. And I can add it when I'm here at work. If I know I'm going to have to work late, then I try to add that there and make sure that we've got coverage, or if someone's going to be home. And so I've actually been using that the last few months, and I've just been raving about it. It's really works nicely.
That's great. So Kaylee, how can our listeners contact you or find you?
Sure. Yes, I would love that. So we do have a website. It's bainprobstlaw.com. We're on social media, Facebook pages as well. And then our phone number is 217-773-1500. And we'd love to hear from someone.
Thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for your time, Cari. Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Billable Mom. At The Billable Mom, we don't pretend to have the answers, but instead have all the questions. Please find us on social media and join the conversation at The Billable Mom on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, Pinterest, and YouTube. We also have a Facebook group where like-minded Billable Moms find solidarity and provide a resource to one another. You can learn more about the Billable Mom and our picks for juggling work and motherhood at www.thebillablemom.com. You can also connect with Cari Rincker directly on social media at Cari Rincker. Until next time, let's calm the chaos 6 minutes at a time.